This will be the first time in 40 years that US presidential inaugural ceremonies are moved indoors. The last president to be sworn in indoors was Ronald Reagan in 1985. The ceremony will be attended by many world leaders and tech giants. After Trump fans and their families, the next most important attendees are the outgoing president and also the vice president. Former Presidents Barack Obama and George W. Bush will also grace the event. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is representing India at the inauguration ceremony. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, President of Argentina and Chinese Vice President are among the guests. Business titans including Ambani's Tim Cook, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk will attend the inauguration in Washington, D.C.
Out of the back of that limousine there. But Kristen, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, and these images are so striking because this is a tradition that goes back years and years. And of course, it did not happen 4 years ago. Then President Trump did not welcome President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden. But here they are. President Biden has said the transition of power is critical, the smooth transition of power. So following through with this critical
We're seeing these traditions. And let's not forget Kamala Harris, of course, the vanquished opponent of Donald Trump. And so they greet, perhaps for the last time, a good morning air kiss from the president and vice president. And they will be in a few moments out there on those steps again, Hallie, as I turn to you, to greet Donald Trump and Melania Trump. And again, more history. We have Donald Trump returning to office for a second term after an interregnum of 4-year absence. And this has happened only one other time in our American history. But there's the shot, the president and the vice president for a final moment and some moments inside now the White House before the incoming president and first lady and vice president and second lady. They would give him a lot of credit for the Trump victory. They think he was that podcast, that interview he did with President Trump, people think was incredibly consequential. You also have tech titans there, Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg, his unmistakable hair right there. And,
yes.
along with others, Jeff Bezos
I believe that's Tim Cook. We only see the glasses, but again, more unmistakable hair. But it's so interesting to see that these titans of business, particularly in the tech industry, have really rallied around the former president, not just rhetorically, but with their money. They've written huge $1 million checks each to be here. They will attend the swearing-in ceremony today.
And the fact that they're at these events as well. You know, it's interesting, Savannah, when you talk to some Republicans about this, they'll go, yeah, and where were they 8 years ago? They see this as a reversal for some of these big tech titans, as you call them, who they felt stifled the speech of conservatives on some of these big platforms like Facebook, of course, owned by Meta, like Twitter. Of course, now that's X. Elon Musk, also a real presence here. We haven't seen any images of him inside, but he is expected to be at that swearing in later on as well. And what's so interesting about this, you look at somebody like a Mark Zuckerberg, who in the eyes of many has had a real shift. And he himself, Zuckerberg, attributes this to the election. He talks about what he calls a new cultural moment when he was revealing that Meta would no longer do independent fact checking on Facebook or on Instagram here, which created an outcry among some, especially Democrats, who thought that was going to be problematic and allow the spread of misinformation. It is a new era in so many ways in Washington, but also in Silicon Valley.
And UFC head Dana White, a Trump ally on the board of Meta now.
That's right.
And by the way, Trump on Truth Social, I think last week or perhaps the week before, in all caps, everybody wants to be my friend. Sure seems like it, and everybody wants to write a big check.
It does. And And zooming out a little bit, it underscores just how different this moment is than 4 years ago, or I should say 8 years ago, when President Trump was coming into the White House as a first-time president. He really was a newbie to how Washington worked. He had people around him who were, you could say, a team of rivals to some extent. This is a very different moment. You had a very skeptical United States when he first entered office. Now, this time, he knows how government works. I was talking to some of his allies yesterday who said not only has he been in the White House for 4 years, he's had 4 years to think about what it is like to be president. And of course, what we're witnessing, we cannot overstate this. Whether you like Donald Trump, whether you love him, whether you don't like him, we are witnessing arguably the greatest political comeback in modern American political history.
I want to bring Peter Alexander, our chief White House correspondent, into this conversation, and he's got his post high above, a vantage point we don't often get to see here in anticipation of Inauguration Day. Peter, and we're talking about, you covered, of course, along with your colleagues here, the first Trump administration, but it is a new day and a new era.
I think you're exactly right, and I echo the points that both Hallie and Kristen have made here. Recognize that this is a president who spent more time, incoming president, and Donald Trump, who spent more time as a former president than he ever did as a candidate before he first arrived in 2017. So he much better understands the rhythms of Washington, recognizes that there are only 2 years before there's a potential shakeup on Capitol Hill where his control of Congress is not as strong as it is right now. We should tell you what we're looking at. This is the North Portico of the White House. It's literally, if I had a better arm, about a football throw away from where we are. Not a very great distance. This is where we saw moments ago President Biden and the First Lady walk outside alongside the Vice President, Kamala Harris, and her husband, the second gentleman. The reporters there yelled at the president, "How are you feeling?" He said, "Good." And as you see, the incoming president, Donald Trump's motorcade, arriving. This is the first opportunity that the incoming, outgoing presidents and their spouses will have an opportunity to greet each other, as you've been discussing. And then, of course, after the tea that they share inside, the traditional ride up to Capitol Hill together, and that's when the clock starts ticking on that transition. The moving around, all the property that belongs to the Bidens goes out, and all the property that belongs to the Trumps comes in. This is not three guys in a truck. This is a ballet of sorts to make it all happen so quickly. But again, on what is really a gorgeous day, the skies are quite blue. It is frigid, though. This is a return of a tradition in Washington. Again, it bears repeating that 4 years ago, there was no moment on the North Portico where the incoming and outgoing presidents were together. Instead, it was the chief White House usher who greeted the Bidens on that day. The Trumps were already back in Florida by the time Joe Biden took the oath of office. We are keeping a close eye on whether, in fact, a letter will be shared between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I have asked multiple White House officials on their final day here. They are not giving up the goods, but I would expect, based on Joe Biden's embrace of tradition, that that's something he would do. Traditionally, it is left in the top drawer of the Resolute desk there. Donald Trump did just the same for Joe Biden. And as I look down Pennsylvania Avenue, I can now see the motorcade is growing as it begins to travel a short distance. The president-elect, alongside his wife, making that short commute together on this day to the White House for their first visit. Not yet as president, only as president-elect. When he comes back, though, after being sworn in, after his inaugural address, after the celebration at Capital One Arena, he will arrive here as president of the United States.
All right, and we're watching the motorcade. The Blair House is right across the North Lawn there. That is where, by tradition, the president-elect and First Lady spent the night last night. So unclear whether they'll have a brief stop off there or will proceed directly to the White House. But we continue to watch these live pictures. That's how a president-elect travels in Washington. You could walk in 5 minutes, or you could drive with 10 cars. Seconds, yeah. But security being what it is, of course, this is how things must be done in our modern era. It's interesting to talk about all the ways that the president-elect has changed in the last 8 years. And it's so interesting because we see Ivanka Trump this morning. We saw a glimpse of Jared Kushner. They were key advisors who came in with the first administration who have decided not to return. We see Eric and Don, his other adult sons, playing big roles in the campaign, but don't expect to do so in this administration. And that's a big change.
Think about how Ivanka Trump had an office in the West Wing. Jared Kushner was doing diplomatic outreach officially on behalf of the Trump administration at the time. time. They were not just close advisors, among the closest people to Donald Trump at the time. And Ivanka Trump has said she is done with politics for right now. She says she likes the policy, she doesn't like the politics, and right now those two are just very mixed here. You've got Jared Kushner, who is, based on my reporting, still offering his opinions on certain matters related to his father-in-law, but not officially taking a formal role. Don Jr. and Eric Trump, his sons, of course, huge surrogates on the campaign trail. You talked to them many times, Savannah, over the course of the campaign as they campaigned on behalf of their father. Speculation that Don Jr. has his own political ambitions. And I wouldn't sleep on somebody who 8 years ago was just a kid, still a young man now, but Barron Trump, who was influential in his father's year. You talk about Joe Rogan. You talk about podcasters like Theo Vaughn, some of these sort of young men who the president-elect, when he was a candidate, did these interviews with, really trying to reach out to men to get them to turn out for him in the election, which, of course, they did.
The lore is that Barron Trump, I think 18, 19 years old, is the architect of the social media.
You as your 47th president of the United States.
Due to dangerously low temps, workers scramble to dust off an inauguration contingency plan, setting up an alternate stage inside the Capitol Rotunda. Unusual, but not unprecedented. Bitter cold in 1985 drove the ceremony indoors for Ronald Reagan.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Dignitaries squeezed shoulder to shoulder.
We stand again at the steps of this symbol of our democracy, or we would have been standing at the steps if it hadn't gotten so cold. Now we're standing inside this symbol of our democracy.
The second straight inaugural without a sea of spectators. Last time restricted for COVID and the aftermath of January 6th.
At this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed.
Today's other big change, a new event site using Washington's Capital One Arena, where a fraction of original ticket holders can view the ceremony and his speech. One expected theme.
It's going to be a message of unity.
An effort aided by other presidents. The Bidens, the Clintons, Bushes, and Barack Obama, but without Michelle Obama. We'll watch him take the oath. 4 years ago, the Trumps refused to attend Biden's inaugural. No outgoing president had ever done that.
So, have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think these former presidents are very keenly aware of how important it is that they have these public gestures. And I really do think that he, in his heart of hearts, wants to be part of that president's club.
Oh, say, can you see? Inaugural tradition has often shined with star power. Oh, this land. This year, expect more celebrities than 2017 and a range of music at parties and events, from country to rap.
God bless the broken road.
Rascal Flatts, Snoop Dogg, and Nelly, with 8-time Grammy winner Carrie Underwood at the ceremony.
Every inaugural has the stamp of the president who is coming in. Take a look at the inaugural today, and you will get an awful lot of clues to Donald Trump's leadership in the next 4 years.
But the show won't go on for the traditional parade. Instead, a detour to the arena where some participants will be recognized, including first responders from Butler County, Pennsylvania, site of the July assassination attempt. Then capping the big day, a night of parties with 3 official inaugural balls. A moment for the first couple's dance. A second start in Washington, weathering this season of change. And times also changed when it comes to the gala black tie event. As an example, there were 14 inaugural balls for Bill Clinton's second term. And as far as big numbers, the Trump-Vance Inaugural Committee says it's on track to raise a record $200 million for all of the events and operations of these several days. And then, of course, the celebration shift from party mode and move tomorrow morning into an interfaith national prayer service.